to get going, we're going to go ahead and get started, and we want to welcome you tonight to our third COVID conversations with our Illinois Black Caucus members. And tonight is a special night because we have our Senator Elgie Sims, amen, which is a very close brother and member of the St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church, and then my brother Kam Buckner. And we're waiting for Sonia Harper to join us also. She'll be joining us this evening. And tonight is just, again, we're having a conversation. We're having a conversation which actually was spurred by the whole COVID-19 activities and how we were sheltered in place and how we wanted to talk about things that were happening in the districts that we all represent. And so, again, free-flowing. What I want to do first, I want to introduce our representatives that are already on, and then also there's Representative Harper.
Hello, Pastor. How are you today?
Wonderful.
Good.
We're going to unmute her, and Pastor Scott Onqué, also the Faith in Place, and also the pastor of the Baptist Church. And so we are glad to host these three individuals tonight to share what's going on in their district around COVID-19, but also to discuss some other hot topics that have stirred up this week. And we're going to do ladies first, all right? And so we're going to have our beautiful sister, Representative Sonia Harper, to come introduce herself and let us know what she's doing in her district real quick. And again, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm so excited to have you.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you again to everyone at Faith in Place. Hello to my fellow legislators, colleagues down in Springfield, and everybody that's on the call today. As you know, we are in some trying times right now, but it's nothing that us resilient people are not used to. And so I'm very happy to report that we have just wrapped up our session in Springfield this year by passing a state budget and also taking care of some other very needed items to make sure that we're moving along. But most importantly, making sure that we're properly funding any type of COVID-19 relief efforts and making sure that people have safe access to the goods and the services and the businesses and schooling and education that they have had, and seeing how we're going to make the needed changes to go forth. So I look forward to discussing some of the specifics on some of the things that we worked on and that we crafted in the budget. We even tackled funding our hospitals, and as we work to more equitably fund our hospitals, there's a larger conversation that needs to take place there around the way that we again, fund them and the transformation plan that's happening on the South Side, especially in this time when we need to make sure that we're taking care of all of our health-related resources. So I'm going to stop there, and I look forward to our conversation today and sharing more of what we're doing right here in the 6th District. You know, I have a vast district. We go all the way from River North to Inglewood, and so I'm in the heart of Inglewood right now. We have some wonderful organizations on the ground just showing their support, and there's an outpouring of love and support. And so we went down to Springfield to make sure that we can continue to support those organizations on the ground doing work so that we can continue to make sure that our businesses are able to come back online and to help people make whatever changes that they need to make to get through this time. So thank you, guys.
Great, thank you so much, Representative Harper, and thank you again for joining us tonight. Senator Sims, busy Senator Sims tonight. He has to do a town hall at 6, so we're going to let him come and introduce himself, and then also give us a quick highlight of some things that are occurring in your district.
But thank you, Pastor, and as always, it is always good to be with you and see you. And thank you, Faith in Place, with all of the outstanding work that you are doing with Faith in Place to make sure that our community is represented. As my colleague mentioned, you know, we in the Black Caucus, and I have been down there working diligently on behalf of the communities that we serve. I have the honor and privilege of representing the 17th district to the south and the southeast sides of the city of Chicago, down to the southern suburbs, and then south into rural Will and Key County. So I've got it. The district goes 55 miles north to south. I represent 220,000 of the hardest working people in the state of Illinois, people who are dedicated to ensuring that they give the best to themselves and their children, make sure that they have all the educational opportunities that they want and need, having business and economic opportunities, but they also have healthcare and they're safe. So we work diligently on that as a caucus, and that's why we fought as a caucus for an economic health and recovery plans. As tonight's conference is about our response to COVID-19, we had an economic health and recovery plan that we wanted to forward into our communities, so that we made sure that as we came out of this pandemic, we were better than we went in. The pandemic and you see the healthcare disparities that have come about, and the light has been shown on from the pandemic. It goes to speak to the longstanding disinvestment that has happened in our communities. So we had a plan that would focus on a couple of different areas. One, how we could make sure that we are addressing those healthcare disparities. So we wanted to put more money into healthcare opportunities that would make sure that the communities that we represent, the communities that we serve, have support, and we are eliminating those healthcare disparities. Second, we wanted to make sure that when the pandemic is over, we know that businesses are able to not just come back online, but to also thrive. So we wanted to make sure that we put into place in this year's state budget that Representative Harper mentioned, and it's critical for us to recognize that we passed a budget that is balanced. This budget is balanced. It funds critical infrastructure needs. It funds critical healthcare needs, but it is balanced. So we wanted a budget that would, when it came back online, when businesses came back online, they could thrive. But then we also wanted to make sure that we recognized that there were challenges that communities faced and that we prepared for that. So we put millions of dollars into support for mortgage and rental assistance, so that individuals who are struggling to make ends meet, we made sure that we had support for them in this budget coming with that they could then be supported, and that their most basic needs, which is food and shelter, were taken care of. So we wanted to make sure that we had direct support, and as a caucus, we had an agenda that we came together around, and we forwarded and we fought for in this budget. And I'm very, very proud of the work that my colleagues and I have done on behalf of the communities that we represent, because we are unashamedly committed to making sure that our communities are better because we are serving them. So thanks so much, Faith and Place. Faith and Place. And to my pastor, Pastor Onqué, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor and privilege to always be with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Senator Sims. And you guys did some great work. I was praying for you guys down there. I stayed in tune on what was going on. And again, thank you for what you have done. Now, my other great Representative Kam Buckner, a strong voice for the state of Illinois. I'm having him come and introduce himself and share what he's doing also and what he's done.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Pastor.
Representative?
Yep. Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for having us and putting this together tonight. I want to thank my colleague, Representative Harper, and Senator Sims for being here and for all the work that they continue to do on the front line for all of our people. Simply put, we left Springfield on March 5th, not knowing that we would not be back, right? And once we came back, the whole world was completely different. So we went down last week with one thought in mind, right? And it was shoring up essential services for our folks, making sure that we could pass a budget that reflected the values of our people and the communities that we represent. I'll echo what the senator and the representative said. We all represent very diverse districts, and that diversity, I think, helps us contextualize and understand what we want our communities to look like when it comes to services and resources. And what we were able to do in this budget, even though we faced a global pandemic, we were able to make some tough decisions that reflected our urgent priorities, right? We created new protections for workers that are affected by the virus. We were able to expand access to telehealth and other healthcare services as well as mental health resources. And we took some steps forward to create property tax relief and to help the schools in our districts and our communities meet the expanding need for e-learning, right? We still have a lot of work to do, and that's why conversations like this are important for us to be able to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community, and then be able to actualize it from a legislative way. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Great introductions, and again, great work downstate. So we know that this COVID-19 caught us off guard, and we've had some conversations in the past about the clear disparities that have surfaced or been unveiled in our communities. We seem to be getting sicker than others, dying disproportionately to others. And so I'm going to have you share on what some things you have learned from your community and what things are happening in your community, and what have your constituents share with you about COVID-19. And I'll start with you, since you're up, Representative Buckner. I'll start with you. Just share with you some stuff that's going on in your community that you're hearing, some feedback.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that were came to the forefront during COVID were things that we already knew, right? But we didn't know in many instances how severe these issues may have been. You know, once again, going back to the diversity of the district, I have the pleasure of representing both University of Chicago Hospital and Northwestern Medical Center, but I also have you know, places in my district like Provident, right, who were really struggling during this time period, and at one point was trying to figure out how to move forward on a day-by-day basis. The people in and around the community were really not just caught off guard by this, but this was an exclamation point on an already bad situation for many of our people. So when we saw the numbers that 70% of the deaths from COVID in Chicago were African American, when only 29% of Chicago's residents are African American, I don't think it was a surprise to many of us. But I think what COVID did shine a light on is that these healthcare disparities, this healthcare delivery issue that we have become accustomed to, and I think in some ways become numb to, it's not just unfortunate, it's just not uncomfortable, but it's also deadly. And COVID really highlighted that.
Great. Senator Sims, what have you been hearing in your community?
Well, I similar to Representative Buckner, I think we're hearing quite a few concerns about the disparity that exists, the systemic and historic disparities which exist. Folks, they want to have access to good quality health care. Within the district, 60% of individuals migrate outside of their local community to get their health care. So there is, while we have South Shore Hospital, which Representative Harper referenced earlier in terms of the hospital transformation, is in the district, but Advocate Trinity is very near the district. But while those healthcare facilities, which are top-notch facilities, are here and located in the community, most people pass them right by to get their health care. I know I can speak from personal experience that those are top-notch healthcare facilities, because I frequent both of them, have frequented both of them. But oftentimes folks are concerned about the lack of testing. They're concerned about the lack of healthcare options available to them, and they're concerned that those healthcare deserts are leading to these disparate outcomes we are seeing in healthcare delivery. So that when you see the vast majority of the deaths coming from COVID-19 are related, or coming in or seen in the African American community, it's not only just because of COVID-19, it's the comorbidity issues that are existing anyway. The fact that you have a disproportionate number of individuals who live in our communities who suffer from asthma, who suffer from diabetes, who suffer from hypertension, and all of the other underlying issues which exist. Those are the concerns that people, residents of my district, and residents of our community continue to ask for, and they continue to ask us to fight for. And that is that's why we had that goal to go to Springfield, even though we had this very compressed session, to make sure that we were down there fighting for those issues that our community told us they wanted to. They wanted to hear that we hear them. We heard their calls. We heard their call to action, and we responded in kind. That's why, again, we had in this year's budget, we put several $100 million into healthcare related expenditures coming from the federal government, coming from the federal government related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we really wanted to make sure that we dealt with some of those systemic challenges, because if you don't deal with the underlying issues, you're never going to get to the overlying problem.
Great. Representative Harper, you represent Inglewood, and we know that that neighborhood has also been highlighted as one of the neighborhoods that are suffering unduly due to COVID-19. And so what has been your response, or what have you heard from your constituents?
So, just like many other South Side or West Side neighborhoods, Inglewood has suffered unduly, not just during COVID, right, but during all times. One of the things that brings me to this work is the issue of healthcare disparities. At the age of 33 years old, I became the oldest Harper in my family after burying my father, my auntie, my granny, and two other family members within a span of 5 years all together. And it was just 2 years after that I became a state representative. But that's the reason why I've been so passionate about making sure that our communities have access to healthy, nutritious food, have access to quality health care, because it is these disparities that lead to all other ills that happen in our community, right? If we have a generation of family that is wiped out simply because their bodies aren't nourished well, or because they are the weakest link because of a lifetime and generations of not having nourished bodies and healthy access to food and healthcare, then who do we have around to raise up our younger generation? Who do we have around to help a single mother help to know how to raise her own family? And so when you think about the breakdown in our community is directly related to the breakdown in our health. And that's all related to the way that our communities have been treated over a long periods of time. And so these same concerns, again, that we've always heard are the same exact concerns that we are hearing now. We just now hear that COVID has put a spotlight, right? So people in Inglewood and South Shore, we already knew that we were going to die 30 years sooner than people in River North or in the Gold Coast or in Lakeview. It's just that COVID has put in our spotlight. So now the question is, well, what do we do about that? And what do we do about that, not just because of COVID-19, but what do we do about it to change around this health disparity from now until the end of time? Because we will always be the weakest link. We will always be the first to die. We will always be the first in line for food and everything else if we don't change this. And so I am hearing every complaint from my district, not just, food access and making sure seniors can get quality food delivered to their homes. Everybody's passing out food, but is it quality food, right? Or are we going to be in the same position again in another 20 to 30 years because half of my community has broken down bodies and can't access quality health care? We simply need to continue to, just like we've been working on in this last session, have conversations about how do we revolutionize the way that we administer healthcare, that we administer nutrition, and change people's minds about the way that we are caring for our bodies, because then that lends itself to education, and then that lends itself to our jobs, and then that lends itself to other conversations that we can take care of. If our bodies aren't taken care of, how can we organize the change that we need in our community? How can we be around to make sure that the next generation is here? Or we can do like others and pick up and leave the problem for the next generation. However, I've chosen not to do that. I've chosen to stay in my community. Though I am the last person left in my family. And though I don't have any family left, my community is my family, and I continue to fight for them. So I'm looking forward to continuing more conversations with everyone about our healthcare access, about the way that we eat, about the way that we play, about the way that we grow, and about the way that we educate ourselves, right? Because one of the biggest issues that I had going into COVID was that when everybody was trying to, make sure that their homes were safe, their children were safe, there were certain kids who were able to continue their education, but certain kids got stopped, right? And so education is a really big thing now. Does everyone have equal access to broadband opportunities? And how about single mothers or grandparents who are now having to work and homeschool at the same time? What type of How are certain children maybe set back more than others because they do not have the type of help that they need? So these are some of the other concerns that we have and that we do need to address. Yes, we can put more money in a budget for childcare for our essential workers, but where's something for tutoring to make sure that along with that childcare, my child isn't falling behind in school? If my child goes to CPS and they just started remote learning a month or two behind all of the other schools, kept on remote learning and didn't miss a beat, how is that? What is that impact going to look like on my students? And so we're worried from all of those fronts. We've provided for those things in all of those fronts, but those conversations still need to take place in many different rooms, and we could use help and input on addressing some of those issues. So I'll stop there.
No, great, great. No, you started with some good stuff because
Well,
we hear the news and they lost track of close to 2,300 students at CPS, and so that's concerning. Are they getting any education? You're bringing up some great points. This is what this is all about.
and Pastor, let me piggyback on that for a moment, because that's the reason that the discussion we're having right now is exactly the discussion that I'm having. After this call, where I'm having a youth town hall to talk about the mental health effects of the pandemic on our young people, because you have so many of our young people who they've missed graduation and prom, or they've been disconnected from their friends and family. So it is weighing on our young people heavily. And as Representative Harper mentioned, we have got to make sure that we provide these opportunities to embrace the village and give these young people a village that they can turn to. So think about what is happening right now for someone who does not have a support system around them as a young person or as a young parent. They don't have a support system around them where they can rely on individuals. I've been out of school. I'm afraid to say how long, but I've been out of school a little while.
You're a young man. No.
I'm certainly, I don't know the new math that my kids are doing, and and I would imagine if my mother or my grandmother were trying to help my kids through their homework, they will be having significant challenges also. So we are dealing with all of these underlying issues, and it's important that we do invest in these issues, and we deal with those underlying disinvestments in our community, so that we can make sure that we build a stronger, better community going forward.
Great, great. Let me just say, for those that are online, if you have a question or a comment, throw it into the chat box. The chat is right at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be able to get some of those comments to our legislators before they jump off. But I do want to talk about the phase. Friday we'll be in phase 3. We're entering to phase 3, reopening of Illinois. And so if we can discuss the strengths and as well as the weaknesses of the phase. And since we're going into phase 3, and we realize that Chicago won't even reach phase 3 until the 3rd of June, I believe that's what the mayor said. So tell me your pluses and your minuses, or your opinion, just overall, of the governor's phase into reopening Illinois. And Representative Buckner, you've been quiet for a minute, so I'm going to let you jump in.
Yeah, Pastor. So I'll say this. I know that as we move forward with the reopening of the state, and we look at the phases, we look at what each of those phases dictates to us and what we need to do. The key word there is to be cautious, right? To be as cautious and deliberate as possible, but still to get to a point where we can, have some economic development and movement. What we've seen in many minority communities, in particular, is that places like beauty shops and barber shops that that we own and we are proprietors of, places like the restaurants that we own, have taken a huge hit, and there are many small businesses in our community that do not know if they'll be able to make it through the next 2 or 3 months, let alone the rest of the year. So I agree with moving forward in a very cautious way. But I do want to, from where I sit, from where my colleagues sit, we want to be able to provide our people with as many resources as they need to actually open up in a smart way, right? In a smart and a safe way. We also want to make sure that folks who are going to be proprietors, right, or the folks who are going to be consumers. Whether it's you going to get your hair done or your nails done or whatever that may be, that you're doing so in a safe way, and you're doing that in an environment, in a situation where we are not exacerbating what this disease and this virus has already done to our community. So I'm watching with bated breath. I am trying to, as I said, be as helpful and bring as many resources to bear as possible, because the truth of the matter is this is new territory for us. We do not know how this works. We have not been here before, but because of that, we've got to be very intentional about how we act.
Good, great. Senator Sims, you want to just talk about these real quick?
Yeah, sure, Pastor. Despite what our president might have you believe, the vast majority of American citizens, in fact, there was a recent poll done where 8 out of 10 Americans, they want us to go slow. They don't want to go back to business as usual and have a flare up in the pandemic, or have a flare up in the virus again. And 6 in 10 are even in favor of making sure people still continue to shelter in place or stay at home unless they're going outside to conduct essential activities. So despite what some might say, caution is the smart course of action. We want people. I want to get back to what is normal. I want to get back to being able to do the things that we did before. But if it's going to put people's lives in jeopardy, that does not make sense. It makes sense for us to have a order, measured, reasonable opening and reopening of all activities, so that we make sure that everyone is safe. We want to make sure that businesses come back. We want to make sure that young people are able to go to school. We want to make sure that families are able to go to work. But we want to make sure that first and foremost, you can't do any of those things if you're not safe and you're not healthy. So we want to make sure that people are healthy, they're safe. We roll out and roll into the other phases in, again, a reasonable manner and a reasonable way, so that we are all safe and we're not. And we have now we've crossed 100,000 deaths nationwide, and every day we continue to hear another. We can there's the morbid numbers of how many we've lost to this virus. We cannot just merely ignore the reality and the science that this is ravaging our community. We need to be measured. We need to be reasonable, and I think that is what I support, and that is where I'm glad that we are taking that position as we continue to roll out and move through the phases to get back to the new normal.
Yeah, I'm glad our governor took this very seriously. Representative Harper, how do you feel about phase 3, or phasing into the reopening of Illinois?
I am happy, and I trust that my governor here in the state of Illinois is making decisions. And so I'm definitely submitting to his leadership and doing whatever I can to help the people in my district get ready for those phases. So yeah.
Great. I see you responded. Someone had a question or actually a comment about link card.
I wanted to talk about that a moment ago.
Link. Those that are online, if you want to go to the chat, if you want to use your link card, you can use that at Amazon and Walmart. And the representative actually put a link to how you can use that. And that's wonderful. And those are important things that happen. I hope that actually that stays in place, because those are kind of services, because we're moving into a new phase in our economy, how people actually shop, how people go about doing business. And so a lot of stuff will be done online, because I think somebody even put that rideshare and CTA is not safe travel, so that's probably a debate, but still I understand the apprehension about actually getting on public transportation at this time. Okay, wonderful. So as we continue the conversation, let's just do a quick pivot, because we're this week, matter of fact, since we've been in COVID-19 and sheltered in place throughout the United States, we've been seeing racism really surface. And whether it was Amar down in Georgia, or just recently where we saw what happened with George Floyd in Minneapolis and the upheaval. And I'm afraid that it's going to reach our communities because people are really under stress. How do you think we should take the approach of settling our communities down with what's going on in our country when it comes to violence on African-American men and women also, because we don't want to forget Breonna, who was sitting in her home at night and got shot from the police entering her home. And so, Senator, I know you have to leave in a few minutes, so I'm gonna let you jump in there first. Senator Sims.
Absolutely.
Right at quarter of, I'm sure. Mm-hmm.
No, Pastor, I appreciate that. Yes, sir. You know, throughout my entire career as a legislator, criminal justice reform has been at the forefront of the things that I have worked on. When I was in the House, I was chair of the Judiciary Criminal Committee. When I moved over to the Senate, I worked on the Judiciary Committee for a long time, and then I became chair of the Senate's Criminal Law Committee. So I am focused on making sure that we improve the relationship between law enforcement and communities and law enforcement, conversely. So, but I've got a couple of recommendations that I think would be helpful. First and foremost, we need to engage in community relations with ourselves, community relations with law enforcement. Second, I think we need to respond to jury summons. When the jury summons hits your door, don't ignore it. Respond. Go get on juries, because when a grand jury happens or decisions are made on whether or not to prosecute or bring charges or what charges to bring, those often happen at the grand jury stage. So oftentimes we are not in those rooms, so we are not in those discussions. So that we should be doing that. Also, we need to make sure that we show up at events like this. Now, this is great that we can do this get together via this electronic medium. But when we are not in the pandemic and we do go back to quote unquote normal, we should make sure that we are engaging in these community discussions. And that's why I appreciate the work, Pastor, that you have always done in the Greater South Shore community through St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church, but also with Faith in Place. Let's not wait until something happens to have these discussions. We should be having these discussions on an ongoing basis so that we have a formalized strategy for how we are going to achieve things at the local, state, and federal levels of government. We need to be having these discussions before there's a problem. I am angry as all get out about what I saw with Mr. Floyd losing his life. There was no justification there is no justification for him losing his life for a non-violent offense. He was clearly on the ground. He was clearly not a threat any longer. The officer kept his foot on that man's neck for several minutes while that man literally begged and pleaded for his life. But that is, we need to make sure that there is not a disregard. And that, again, as we go back to the pandemic just illustrates the disinvestment that has happened in our communities, and we cannot allow that to continue. We have to make sure that the investments in our communities continue. And I don't want anybody's. I don't want to eat off anybody else's plate, but I want everything that's coming to mine. It doesn't mean I want to eat yours, but I should get all of mine. And that's what our communities are asking for. That's what the people that send us to Springfield they are asking us to go down there and fight for. They want us to make sure that we are getting their piece of the pie for them. We want to be treated equitably. They want to be treated fairly. They want to make sure that they get everything coming to them. And if I can, Pastor, for just a moment, a plug for the census. This is a critical time for all of us. This is exactly why we should be filling out that census, because the census boils down to a couple of things. It's all about resources, the tax dollars that we pay to the government coming back, and representation. Who is going to represent us? So we need to make sure that we are responding to the census, because it's critically important for what our community is going to look like, where the healthcare dollars are going to go, where the education dollars are going to go, where the infrastructure dollars are going to go. So please, if you have not filled out your census, please do it. If you have not, engage your family members to do the same. If you have and they haven't, we need our census to be front and center, because it is an opportunity for us to make sure that we stand up and be counted.
Great. I'm glad you brought the census up. I'll be doing a census online training on June 16th at 4:30 p.m. on this same platform, because of how important the census is. And again, the levels of community engagement that are necessary if we're going to turn this ship around. Representative Harper, real quick, when you think about the hurt in the community and the response that they're seeing from this blatant level of disregard for Black lives, how do you respond? How do you respond to your constituents to say, how do we heal the pain? I think you're on mute still.
Again, in this same instance, we've been having conversations around healing our pain and healing our violence in our community long before now, right? And so I would say, just as Senator Sims said, it's very important that we continue to organize our communities and that we continue have these conversations, and that our communities and the people in them actually feel engaged and they feel a part of something. When you truly feel connected to your community or the people in it, you will take care of it. You will defend it. You won't disrespect it. You won't throw trash on it. You won't shoot on it, right? And I think it goes back to changing the mindset of the people. And you change mindset by educating people on how things came to be and how they can play a big part in turning things around for themselves. And once I think you get people involved in their own resurrection and their own resiliency and their own let's fight something collectively together, then they stop, fighting against and tearing down what they have for each other. And so I think that we have to continue along those same lines. Sure, we're seeing things today, especially in this, this extreme, highly bipartisan culture that we have in Washington, D.C. and all of this fighting that we have. But we also see, a culture of people coming together and overcoming and doing what we've always done in those hard times. And I say that it is now in those times that we have to make that voice, that positivity, speak louder than the negativity through these conversations, through us continuing to innovatively organize our neighbors and organize our power. We have a lot to deal with this summer over violence prevention, and how do we think our regular problems around violence is going to be happening, or is going to be increased, or maybe decreased due to what's going on in COVID, and how do we protect for that? Again, I think these are the same conversations that we have. These are the things that we've been working on. But I think now that we've been made to sit down and not go anywhere, perhaps we can have more of these conversations where think tanks are putting together some real plans that are specific to geographic areas of the city, where we can stamp out violence on this block or that neighborhood this summer, or we can, increase food security in this particular census tract or in this particular side of town. But we have to organize, and we have to be apparent about those things, and we have to do it on purpose. Like, it is not just going to happen. It isn't just going to happen just because somebody put a line item in the budget for it. There has to be a connection from the federal to the state to the county, and then all the way down very ground where that money is supposed to reach in our communities, to the organizations, to the people, to the churches and faith-based institutions that are doing the work. And so I know I said a lot there, but the basic gist is that we're going to have to continue to organize for safe communities and to save lives, more so in this time than we've always have. And I look forward to continuing to do that, right? So show me some more innovative ways that we can organize our community, that we can harness that power. And then now I can take that power with me to Springfield and get some laws passed. The aldermen can take that power with them to council and get the things that we need. And we're linked up on every level the way that we need to be, to fund our communities in a way that makes a difference, and not just kind of throwing money at problems here and there.
Mm-hmm. Great. Representative Buckner, you have definitely emerged as a strong voice as a representative down in Springfield. And with your voice, how do you think we should tackle these hurts in our communities that we're seeing from this same conversation about the obvious racism that's occurring?
I think first and foremost, we cannot heal if we do not acknowledge that there are wounds there, right? And I think that we have not done a great job of talking about that in an intentional way from the onset, right? So I think that's very important. I also think, much like my colleagues just said, that we have to have these uncomfortable conversations in order to move the ball forward. But just acknowledgement of racism or acknowledgement of past ills or traditional harms within itself is not enough. Acknowledgement is only worth anything when it's coupled with action, right? And so that action, as Representative Harper says, has to come from a collective. It has to be an issue of connectivity. And what I worry about, Pastor, is that that we oversimplify some of these issues, and we end up putting ourselves in a more disadvantageous position. I've been reading social media posts and whatnot for the last few days, and you've got the Minneapolis situation, but there's also the situation in New York in Central Park. And what happened there is that a lot of people have latched on to this idea or this myth of the perfect victim, right? Because that brother was Harvard educated and because he was gainfully employed and because he was this, that, and third. There are folks saying, well, that really shouldn't have happened to him. I mean, I had a situation where I had an altercation with a police officer based on my mask and them saying that my mask made me look suspicious. And what I wanted to drive home to everybody was that just because I'm an attorney, just because I'm a state rep, that should not mean that my situation or my life meant more than my cousin who has a 30-year-old rap sheet, right? It shouldn't, and it doesn't. And we've got to make sure that we're the ones, espousing their narrative. And I'll just add one more thing to what Senator Sims said. I think there is a very important piece of it when it comes to policy and making sure that we are engaged and civically involved. I also would love to see situations or some circumstances where we can have more folks who look like our community policing our community, right? More people who have more diverse experiences being the ones who protect and serve us, because I think then and only truly then can we change the narrative and how police and community relations look in our city.
Great. There's a couple questions that popped up in the chat. One was on COVID testing in our communities, and I kind of answered it. I know that the statistics from COVID testing can be found on the public health website, but what else could we share with folks about the COVID testing in your communities? Or do you have any sites or locations that you're willing, you can share where actual COVID testing? I know we did COVID testing here at St. Luke on last Saturday, and we actually tested 68 people on a Saturday between 10 and 1. But do you know any of the locations? And since you're up, Representative Buckner, just give me a quick location of COVID testing in your community.
Yeah, so I know that the U of I and Miles Square just set one up in South Shore right off of Stony Island. That's one that's been running for about a week and a half now. And I know that the Howard Brown Health Center mobile unit is kind of going around places on the South Side. The thing about this testing is a lot of it is moving in a very quick and rapid way, right? And so we're getting some of this information last minute. So I would say stay in tune with your state senators and your state reps, because I know all of us have a very robust kind of communications plan on how to let our people know that the testing is coming or the testing is available to them. But we continue to work to set up sites. I worked with a few of my colleagues to get Walgreens to set up a site on the old Walgreens across from Chicago State on 95th and in King Drive in Senator Sims' district. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to push because we know that as these numbers rise, there are still too many people in our communities who are not being able to get tested. But we do have a resource guide, and I'll make sure that you get that, Pastor, so from at least from my office how quickly these things are being set up and where they exist. Great.
Senator Sims, do you have any locations that were not mentioned?
Well, yeah, we have quite a few in the city. Representative Buckner mentioned the one that's right there by Chicago State, but we have one near at Roseland Hospital, 45 West 111th Street. There's a TCA Health, 8425 South Cottage Grove. There is one at TCA Health, 1029 East 130th. And we have a new facility or new testing site located at Studio Movie Grill, 210 West 87th Street. And if someone did not get those those sites, they can certainly find them on my website at senatorlgsims.com, or they can find them on my social media pages both on Facebook and on Twitter.
Yeah, Representative Harper, do you have some sites that you still with me?
And Pastor, before Representative Harper jumps on,
I know you got to go.
I'm going to have to jump onto the other call that they are waiting on me to do the sound check and everything. But this was an amazing conversation. I look forward to continuing it. If there are other questions or concerns that someone has for me, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here. We serve you. We are honored and privileged to be your voices in Springfield. So if anyone needs me, Pastor knows how to get me all the time. So thank you so much for having me. Representative Harper, Representative Buckner, thank you for allowing me to be on here with you. And I know you guys, I know I'm leaving you all of you, I'm leaving you in good hands with both of them. Thank you for having me, Pastor.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. All right. Representative Harper, some testing sites in your community?
Yes, as always, you can always contact my office because we have lots of different testing sites. But just off the top of my head, we're doing testing at the Access Clinic on 51st and Ashland, and also at the Howard Brown Clinic as well. And then we also have a mobile testing site coming up at Alderman Dow's office on 50th and State Street coming up this weekend. So yes.
Great. Okay, so now there was a downstate question about the hospital bill or the coverage for hospitals. Did you guys address, was that a statewide bill for hospital funding?
The hospital assessment bill was a statewide bill. So it's basically for hospitals that receive Medicaid, and it's a reimbursement based on some state formula and some of what the federal government does. But yeah, it does cover hospitals throughout the entire state of Illinois. Okay,
great. Excellent. Let me see. I'm just going to grab some more questions and see if there was some conversation about the back on that hospital about the funding of hospitals like Jackson Park, which they said was subpar. That's not in your district, Stony Island? No.
No, that's Curtis Tarver and Lamont Robinson.
Right. I got them coming. Don't worry, I got them.
Okay.
That's my rep, actually. Curtis is my rep, right? Okay, good. All right. Anything? We have a couple more minutes. Anything you guys want to say as we prepare to close? Well, let me first thank you from the bottom of my heart for even taking time out of your very, very busy schedules. And when you got those text messages for saying I'm praying for you, I really was praying for you because I know that was a very difficult environment to go down in to pass this legislation. But when I saw what happened, the fruits of your labor, I was well pleased. And so again, thank you so much for your sacrifices and passing good legislation that we can all applaud during very difficult times. But Representative Buckner, if you want to give us a couple closing words. And
yeah, absolutely. Well, once again, thank you, Pastor Onqué and Faith in Place, for putting this together. I think one of the most important things I heard tonight, from at least from our side, was what my colleague Representative Harper said about bringing the community together to find answers to our problems. My grandfather told me a long time ago there are two types of people in the world: people who always want to be right, people always want to get it right. All right, and I think you have some representatives here who, and including Senator Sims and the other folks I know you've had on here, who want to get it right. We've got to do a better job of having a continuous conversation with our community about the things that are important. And when we have those, we're able to go to Springfield and go to bat for the things that are important, and we can do it without batting the eye because we understand what it is that our people want. Right? We are local representatives for a reason. We've got our finger on the pulse of what's going on. But it takes a perpetual and a
Representative, I think you froze up on me.
To make sure that the voices are heard is important to us. So thank you for all you do, and thank you for continuing the conversation and continuing to fight.
All right, appreciate that. And Representative Harper, you want to have some closing words?
Thank you so much for having this. I hope this is, I know you've been doing these conversations, but I hope that this is something that you will continue to do. I very much enjoy always working with Faith in Place, and I love the work that you guys have done and will continue to do in our communities. Let's continue to engage people, educate them, and help them to organize and mobilize for the things that we really need in our community. And if anyone would like to keep in contact with me, please email me or follow me on Facebook. And I'm always ready to roll up my sleeves, have the hard conversations, and do the work needed for this next short period of time that I'll remain a legislator.
Wonderful. Well, one of our participants actually put a link for identifying places to get COVID testing, and I thank you for that. And then some others, I thank all of the people that put comments in here. But most of all, I thank our two representatives and our senator for sharing with us this time. And again, I picked people that I enjoy working with. And so I didn't just haphazardly choose people to be on this conversation. I like to see people, Senator Buckner, tell your grandfather he's a very wise man. I like people to get things done. Yes, and you all have been getting things done. And so we're going to continue to get things done on behalf of the communities that we serve. And we're going to continue to allow our voices to be heard. And so during this COVID-19 season, I just pray everyone keeps themselves safe. Continue to follow the rules or the plan, washing our hands frequently, social distancing, even after we come back to what we call normal, wearing our masks. There's nothing wrong with wearing your mask and making sure that you protect others from anything that you may have. And then also continuing to be just vigilant about our efforts to turn this situation around. So again, thank you so much. And I don't see any more questions. And so we're gonna go sign off and say, Aranara.
Thank you, everybody.
Bless each and every one of you.
God bless y'all.
So much. All right, bye now.